There are things in this world that should never be spoken of, not because they are myths, not because they are fables, but because even the mere act of acknowledging their existence is enough to draw their gaze. And once they see you, once they know you exist, nothing can hide you. No light, no shadow, no God, no grave. If you speak its name, if you whisper it, if you even think of it too hard, it will come for you. You learned that the hard way, didn't you? The first time was in your childhood. You were 6 years old, sitting cross-legged on your grandmother's worn-out carpet, listening to her stories. You loved her stories. But that night, her voice had a tremble in it. That night, her eyes darted around as she spoke, like something was listening. "There is a name, child," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "A name that should never be spoken. A name that should never be thought. A name that..." The house shook, just for a second, just for a moment. The lights flickered, the furniture creaked, and outside the wind howled like a dying animal. And when it passed, your grandmother was silent. Her lips were pressed tightly together, and her eyes were full of terror. "Forget what I said," she muttered. "Forget it now." But you didn't forget. And now, years later, you wish you had. You should never have gone back to that house. You should never have opened her old books. Should never have run your fingers over the strange carvings on her wooden floors. Should never have let your curiosity dig deeper than the grave she now rested in. But some things cannot be undone. Some doors, once opened, never close again. You saw it first in the mirror. A glimpse, a shadow, something standing just behind you. It wasn't there when you turned. It never was. But it was closer the next time. And the next, and the next. Then the whispers began. They weren't words, not really. They were something that slithered into your skull, something that gnawed at your sanity. When you tried to sleep, they murmured from the corners of the room. When you tried to eat, they echoed from the hollow of your plate. When you looked at your own reflection, the whispers crawled up your throat like hands desperate to pull you under. Then came the dreams. You don't remember when sleep stopped being a sanctuary. It happened gradually. The first few times, the dreams were nothing but glimpses of things you couldn't comprehend. Bone-white towers reaching into the sky, rivers that ran thick and red, a vast plain covered in writhing things that almost looked like people. Almost. Then the dreams became something more. You weren't just seeing anymore. You were walking. You were touching. You were hearing. And something else was hearing you. That's when it started whispering back. It isn't a creature. It isn't a god. It isn't even a thing that belongs in words. But it has a name. And that name should never be spoken, but you know it now. It is a name that exists between syllables, a sound that your throat will never shape, a thing that presses against the very air whenever it is remembered. It is the name that has been following you since the day you were born, since the moment you first gasped for breath. It has been waiting for you to hear it, and now you have. Do you think it was coincidence that your grandmother warned you? Do you think it was chance that you found her books? Do you think it was luck that led you here? It has been calling to you your whole life. It has been waiting for you to listen. And now, as you sit alone in the silence of your room, you realize the whispers have stopped, because it no longer needs to whisper. It is here, and it is watching. You should never have come this far, but it's too late now. The walls of your home are shifting, aren't they? The corners are not where they used to be. You've walked this hallway 1,000 times before, but tonight, something is wrong. The distance stretches, and the door you just passed is in front of you again. The floor creaks, but you are standing still. The shadows are deeper, darker, filled with something unseen, but not unfelt. You are not alone. The air is thick now, heavy, humming with an unnatural energy. The silence isn't truly silent anymore. It pulses, it breathes, it waits. You try to turn on the lights, but they flicker and die. You try to open a window, but the glass is no longer there. Only a wall where the outside world once was. Your phone rings. You answer it without thinking. The line is dead. Then, a breath, a whisper. Your name spoken from the other end, in your own voice. You drop the phone. Then the scratching begins. It's coming from inside the walls, from beneath the floors, from the spaces in between where no living thing should be. A slow, deliberate scrape, a claw dragging across wood, metal, bone. It grows louder, closer. You can hear the breath behind it now, ragged, starving. The lights flicker once more, and for the briefest of moments, you see something standing in the doorway, watching you. Then the walls begin to bleed. The ceiling warps as shadows stretch across it like ink spilling through water. The smell of rot floods your nostrils, cloying and thick. You back away, but the floor beneath you turns soft. Your feet sink an inch into the wood, and then another, as though the house itself is swallowing you. A whisper snakes through the air again, but this time it is not in your voice. It is something else entirely. Something ancient, something wrong. It speaks, and the walls tremble. The room twists, reality bending at the edges like a decaying film reel. And as the whisper grows, as it calls your name with a voice that does not belong in this world, your body ceases to obey. Your legs carry you forward against your will. Your arms stretch outward. Your lips part, and you feel a word forming in your throat. A word you do not know. A word you do not want to say. But it is forcing itself from your mouth, pulling itself from your lungs, clawing its way into existence. You try to fight it. You try to hold it back. But the more you resist, the more the world around you darkens. The air becomes heavy, pressing against your skin like wet cloth. The shadows coalesce, thick and pulsing, dragging you further into the abyss. And then, finally, you understand. You never spoke its name, but it was never about you speaking it. It was about it making you say it. It was about it crawling into your thoughts, into your breath, into your blood, until you had no choice but to call it forth. And now, as your lips shape the final syllable, as the last remnants of yourself slip away, you realize the truth. It never had to come for you, because it was always here. And now, you are part of it. But what if you weren't the first? And what if you won't be the last? And somewhere in a house not unlike yours, a child listens to a story whispered by an old woman with trembling hands. A name is spoken, a warning is ignored, and the cycle begins again. Time itself stretches before you, not as an endless expanse, but as a prison, a relentless shackle that binds your very soul. The weight of existence bears down upon you with the inevitability of fate, pressing your mind as though gripped by the cold, unyielding hand of a forgotten god. There is no warmth here, no sign of life's gentle pulse. Instead, you feel only the slow, suffocating rhythm of something ancient and abominable. And then, piercing through the oppressive silence, a voice emerges from the darkness. "You are not supposed to be here." The words crash into your consciousness like shattered glass. You jolt awake, gasping for air. Yet the atmosphere remains heavy and cloying, thick as tar and impossible to swallow. The darkness writhes around you with a sinister purpose, whispering in a language that claws at the fringes of your understanding. In that endless void, shapes contort and merge, faces half-formed, groping hands, snapping jaws that promise both salvation and damnation. Clutched tightly in your grasp is your blade, the final remnant of a world that once made sense. And with trembling determination, you step forward. Beneath your feet, the very ground groans in despair, emitting a sound laden with sorrow and dire warning. You have found yourself within the dreaded maw, a chasm where the forsaken are devoured and souls unravel into oblivion. Legends spoke of this place in hushed tones. Every sacred text and every crumbling ruin bore witness to its cursed existence. Yet here you stand, having braved the journey with a strength born of defiance, too far from retreat to yield now. Every step echoes the dirge of lost hopes, every heartbeat a solemn tribute to a destiny forged in darkness and strife. Before you looms a door, impossibly ancient and etched with shifting symbols that defy mortal comprehension. As your fingers brush against its cold, unforgiving stone, it shudders open with a sound akin to snapping bone and grinding teeth, a prelude to the horror that awaits. Beyond the threshold, a vast chamber sprawls before you, grotesque and otherworldly. Walls of undulating, pulsating flesh stretch upward to meet a ceiling of roiling, fathomless void. At the heart of this nightmarish tableau sits a throne, fashioned of bone and sinew, upon which the god of hunger stirs in languid, ominous repose. It does not speak in words. It needs no language. Its mere presence shatters your mind, fracturing your sanity as visions overwhelm you. You see endless feasts of rotting flesh, entire civilizations swallowed whole, and mighty gods reduced to naught but gnawing mouths and an insatiable hunger. This is the primordial hunger, both the first and the last, a void destined to outlast all creation. The specter of cosmic consumption looms over every memory, as if past, present, and future are all devoured by this unquenchable force. Yet you have not come here to kneel. The blade in your hand glows with a defiant light, a beacon fueled by your determination. As the god of hunger shifts, the surrounding darkness convulses and shrieks in an agony older than time, a soundless lament of ancient despair. It understands now. You are no ordinary soul, no mere morsel destined to be lost in its endless banquet. You are an anomaly, a mistake in its gluttonous design. Your defiance sparks a flame that even the abyss cannot ignore. Then it rises. The very walls transform into gaping maws, their jagged teeth snapping hungrily as they lunge toward you. In a swift, desperate maneuver, you roll away from the snapping jaws and slash with your blade. Your strike does not merely rend flesh, it severs something far more profound, a vital thread in the dark tapestry of the maw's very essence. The abominable substance recoils in a chorus of agonized shrieks as your blade tears through its core, fracturing the ancient bond that holds the nightmare together. Yet the god of hunger is relentless. It lunges with a speed that defies its monstrous size, its massive form contorting as limbs stretch into impossible angles, its fingers ending in jagged, bony talons. You raise your sword in a desperate parry, deflecting the vicious blow even as the force hurls you backward. Pain blooms in your ribs like wildfire, yet there is no time for weakness here, only the merciless demand for survival. The very air thickens, as if in league with the maw, a suffocating miasma intent on dragging you down into the endless abyss. The god's laughter, a soundless, maddening mirth, vibrates through your bones, threatening to shatter your resolve. With clenched teeth and a heart hardened by loss, you whisper the name of the one you swore to avenge and charge forward, every step a challenge thrown directly at the void. Steel meets primordial divinity, and the collision rends the very fabric of existence. Shockwaves ripple through the darkness, splintering the ground beneath your feet into shards of despair. The god of hunger howls, a sound beyond mortal kenning, as its form begins to unravel in spasms both grotesque and mesmerizing. The walls of living flesh, animated by a tortured life force, scream in protest as the maw starts to collapse inward. With every desperate claw and lurching movement, the god falters. The wound you have inflicted is not merely physical, but existential, a tear in the very essence of its being. Even as its form convulses in agony, the hunger is not done. A final desperate assault erupts, a maelstrom of limbs and a cacophony of ravenous mouths, all reaching out with a hunger that defies the laws of nature. You dodge with a desperate grace, evading snapping jaws that flash mere inches from your throat. The ground itself splits and fractures beneath you, and suddenly you are falling, a helpless, disoriented descent through a nightmare of gnashing teeth and grasping clawed hands. The god of hunger has become more than a creature. It has transformed into a realm, an ever-shifting landscape of despair that refuses to grant you escape. Desperation steals your resolve. Your fingers tighten around your sword as you twist midair, driving the blade down with every ounce of defiant strength you possess. The cold steel sinks deep, piercing the heart of the maw itself. With a final, wretched scream that reverberates through the abyss, the monstrous entity shudders, and the oppressive darkness recoils as the walls of its prison collapse like a tomb sealing shut. In that moment, the sheer force of your will tears a rift in the fabric of the realm, and the unholy presence falters. In its dying throes, the maw lashes out in a frenzied assault. Tendrils of dark, pulsating flesh whip about, tearing at the boundaries of reality as the chamber crumbles into chaotic ruin. The anguished howls of the collapsing god meld with the roar of the breaking earth, forming a symphony of despair and defiance that echoes in your ears. Though battered and bleeding, you force your way forward, stepping over shattered remnants of the god's form, determined never to succumb. Every wound is a scar of rebellion. Every step is a solemn pledge that you will not be devoured, now, nor ever. Then, as if in answer to your struggle, a brilliant, piercing light floods the chamber, a cascade of pure radiance that shatters the oppressive darkness. The last sound you hear is the ancient wail of something primal and terrified, a sound that seems to echo from the very dawn of creation. Before in an instant the world dissolves into silence, you awaken to the gentle caress of sunlight on your skin and the soft murmur of a world reborn. The horrors beneath are gone, as if they were a fevered dream, yet the mark of that night remains etched deep within your soul. You are free, but you're not whole. A lingering emptiness whispers that the battle was but a prelude to a war that spans beyond mortal time. Somewhere, beyond the fragile veil of existence, something stirs. Deep beneath the familiar fields and the endless, untroubled sky, in a hidden realm where ancient wounds fester, the echoes of your defiance linger like a half-remembered nightmare. The maw has been vanquished, its master brought low, yet the insatiable hunger, the very essence of oblivion, persists. In the crumbling ruins of that cursed place, a subtle shift takes root, not the birth of a new god, but the awakening of something old and vengeful. A presence that remembers your resistance, and now bides its time in the shadowed corners of eternity. A voice, neither flesh nor bone, but pure, unfed craving, murmurs in the silent corridors of ruin. Hunger is patient. It learns, it watches, and it waits for the precise moment when it can rise anew. As you traverse the sunlit fields, a shadow dances at the edge of your vision, a fleeting promise that the feast is far from finished. A distant, intimate whisper brushes past your ear, a reminder that the war is not over, that beneath the surface of this serene, unsuspecting world, the hunger endures. Even as you move forward into the bright promise of a new day, the relentless echo of that ancient hunger resounds deep within the earth. You have won this battle, yet the war rages on, a ceaseless contest between the defiant spark of life and the insatiable void of desire. With every step you take, you carry the memory of that fateful confrontation, aware that the hunger watches and waits, ready to rise again when the world's guard is lowered. In the endless interplay between light and shadow, despair and defiance, your journey continues, a solitary pilgrimage marked by scars and the unyielding resolve of one who has stared into the abyss and not blinked. As you wander desolate landscapes where the ground is cracked and barren, where the wind carries the faint whispers of lost souls, every heartbeat becomes a quiet drum of rebellion against the inevitable. The hunger, though momentarily sated, is eternal. It seeps into every crevice of existence and promises that when night falls again, it will return with renewed fury. In hidden ruins and ancient libraries, you piece together fragments of forbidden lore, stories of primordial pacts, of gods who bargained with the void itself, and of mortal heroes whose defiance was etched into the annals of time. The pages speak of a hunger that once governed the cosmos, a force that created and destroyed in equal measure. And now, in the echo of your battle, that same hunger gathers strength in the dark recesses of forgotten memory. At times, as you set camp beneath a sky scattered with unblinking stars, you can almost hear the faint, rhythmic pulsing of the maw, a reminder of that nightmarish realm and the battle that reshaped your destiny. The wind carries voices from ages past, spectral whispers that promise both retribution and hope. In those moments, you realize that you are not alone in your struggle. You are the inheritor of countless souls who dared to defy the void, a beacon of resistance against an insatiable darkness. And so you continue, each step a defiant promise that you will not be consumed by the endless hunger. Though your body is marred by scars and your spirit bears the weight of unspoken loss, you march onward into an uncertain future, a future where the battle is far from over. The echoes of that ancient, devouring hunger linger at the edges of your perception, a constant reminder that while you may have quelled one monstrous appetite, the war for existence continues unabated. In that moment of fragile victory, as the first rays of dawn kiss the horizon, you lift your gaze to the sky, a vast expanse that now seems less like a sanctuary and more like a silent witness to the ceaseless conflict beneath. The hunger waits, it watches, and you, scarred yet unbowed, remain ever vigilant, knowing that when the shadows lengthen once more, the next chapter of this eternal struggle will begin anew.